experience is definitely a huge theme today. Clearly super important to all of us who have residents. So really excited to dive further into that discussion with a great panel focused specifically on that. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jason Gherardini, Anil Singh, Zach Jennings, Dave McGuinness, and Shlomi Ronen.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to kick off the panel with everybody making introductions. I think you've heard a lot about different technologies today. We have a mixed panel here of both technology providers and owners of real estate to really discuss how to implement technology both from a user experience but also from an owner management and cost efficiency experience to help streamline operations and particularly the multifamily space. So with that, why don't we start on the end and have everyone introduce themselves.
Jason Gherardini, Senior Vice President of IT for Sares Regis Group, just like it says in the picture. We do third-party property management for multifamily apartments, commercial, industrial, and we're also a buyer, builder, and seller of that same market.
How many units?
Right now we're about 100. We're at 26,000 units, 120 properties.
I'm Zach Jennings, CEO of Chargie. We're a turnkey EV charging provider based here in Los Angeles. We do the entire process from sales, installation, engineering, ongoing break fix, maintenance. We run the network communications, the mobile app and technology. So we're one point of contact for the entire experience to make it very easy on the property owners. We're currently also servicing Washington, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas as well.
David McGuinness. I head up business development at a company called Openpath, or an access control provider, typically deployed at perimeter and common area entrances for your residents, as well as through integrations to the wireless locks on the apartment unit doors.
Anil Singh, Vice President of Technology at Veritas Investments. We are owner and operator of multifamily assets in San Francisco and Los Angeles. About 350 buildings, 7,500 units, growing rapidly in San Francisco and Los Angeles both.
So we've heard a lot about different technologies that are out there today, and this for you, Anil and Jason. Let's start out with just kind of talking about how you think about implementing new technology. What's driving that decision today? Is it more the user experience? Is it cost savings? Is it a little both? Jason, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, I think the drive comes from, where technology sits today. Technology used to be kind of like commercial based, right? You saw your cool technology commercial. Now it's all consumer based. So, somebody walks in, they want a door lock, right? They want something they can control with their phone. So it's a mix of driving from the consumer end, but also driving from the business end of, some of these technologies help us save money. You get smart thermostats, and you put those in, and you can save a lot of money down the road. So I think it's a mix of both that really drives it, and what we choose to put out in the properties. Now, us being third-party property management is a little different. We inherit a lot of technology with some of that, and a lot of retrofitting on that end.
Anil, what about you?
Yeah, I'll add on to what Jason said. We also look at gaps on what resident may be needing or what they want. With pandemic, working from their apartments is really key. So how we can help them. People are struggling with rent payment, how we can help them. So yes, how do we use the consumerization of technology to help them with, with door locks or dog walking service or laundry, but at the same time, how we can help them really help them pay rent on a flexible payment plan if they can. How we can help them build their credit, credit rating by paying the rents on time. So we are also looking from that point of view.
So can each of you maybe talk about a technology that you guys recently assessed and are implementing? What's worked, what didn't work?
Well, for us, the pandemic really drove, being able to show an apartment remotely. We hadn't rolled anything out on our communities yet. We were just starting to take a look at it, and we had a lot of innovative managers and leasing agents that were actually walking around FaceTiming with potential, clients, showing it, or they started making their own videos. So that was one of the ones we really quickly realized we needed to roll out pretty quickly and find a technology. And I don't know if you guys listened to Heather Wallace earlier. Her and I worked together. She used to work at SRG with me. We kind of took the same approach as where, went, evaluated, 3 vendors and took a look and, tried a bunch out. And then we found some of our other properties already had some that had the third property. So we evaluated from that end. And now we're really pushing that technology, really drove that. So.
And with the impacts of the pandemic reduced today, are you finding that residents are still gravitating towards using the virtual tours, and is it become kind of a key element of the marketing process?
Yeah, it is. People want that. They want that flexibility. When we're closed, or be able to go with those locks and stuff. My daughter's visiting right now from Seattle, and the other day she went to go check out an apartment, and the people weren't there. She had a time slot. They weren't there. It was in Seattle. I won't mention the management company, but they didn't show up. And had that been a smart lock situation, where they could go in and have a time slot and be able to open it, she would have saw that. And they actually ended up renting somewhere else. So I think the demand is really out there, and it's useful for us.
So you've taken it to the point where somebody's going online, doing a virtual tour, putting in their information so that you can verify them before giving them access to the building, and then giving them access to certain buildings so they can walk through and touch it?
Yeah, we have a couple locations, especially in the city's high-rise, where it's really useful for us to get in and do that. Yeah, so not all we evaluate where it's going to work best. We've got some, we allowed to say senior citizen, above age properties where it really doesn't make sense to put that in. That's not going to happen.
That's interesting. Anil, what about you? You mentioned credit and rent payments. Yeah.
So I'll give maybe 3 examples where we have deployed technology and measure the success of what's working, what's not. It's very important as you are looking to deploy anything, especially if it's a resident-faced, make sure you know how you're going to measure it. Otherwise, residents may or may not even use it. So touching on rent payments and making it flexible for residents, so they can make rent payments as a payment plan. And not only that, build their credit while making their rent payments.
So if somebody wants to pay rent weekly, they can pay rent weekly?
Yes. And we have lots of gig workers who have, inconsistent income stream. So we look at their income stream and we develop a payment plan for them. So they can pay different amounts on different weeks and still make the full month payment. So that's one. Not only we allow them to make flexible payments, every time they make payments, we report it to the credit bureau and they are able to build their credit history. This is something unheard of, and even I was skeptical, but it's working great. How many rent payment company will allow you to report your rent payment to credit bureau? Not many. We do that and it's been a success. Another example is we are allowing our residents to pay their rent on credit card, a different credit card, and earn rewards point on them. So you are paying, let's say, $3,000 in San Francisco. You are earning $3,000 worth of points on your credit card payments, and with a 0 transaction fee. So one of the key things is how do you make rent payment without transaction fee, and we are making that happen. So that's second example.
So is the transaction cost being borne by you?
No, it's borne by the credit card company.
Okay, so they're allowing you as the merchant to charge rent without any transaction fee in order to get the acquisition of the renter.
Yes, and during pandemic, when we didn't have this credit card, we allowed residents to charge their rent on the credit card, but we ate that cost. Residents were suffering, so we didn't want to pass any more cost to them. So we ate that cost, but after we implemented this credit card, now it's not borne by us or the residents, it's borne by the credit card company. So,
and are they still allowed to use whatever credit card to pay rent, or are you just this is the only card that they're allowed.
They can use it as a normal credit card. They can do grocery shopping and make rent payments.
But if they have another, like an American Express card or something else, can they still use that? Do you still give them the option? So
Yes. If they use any other card, then there is a transaction fee associated
so you
with it.
move the transaction fee
Yes.
to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the second example on helping residents. Third one, we have residents who do laundry. We are making the laundry a smart laundry. So it's app controlled, and you can lock the laundry, so you don't have to worry about your laundry being stolen or somebody opening your laundry. And we are seeing lots of success too.
That's amazing. So, talking about the user experience, Zach and David, both of you have technologies that you're implementing to help building owners make their properties more attractive and more current with the current demands and needs of residents. So, Zach, why don't we start with you? Obviously, electric cars are proliferating. How are you guys being able to manage and help support the demand for electric charging in these older buildings?
Our installation, our method, we focus on what's called the bookends. Two places you're going to have the longest dwell periods. Those are going to be where you work and where you live. Single-family homes is not an issue because you can put your own charger in your garage. But when you start talking apartment buildings, multifamily, that's up to the property owner. So our key to getting into these properties is, one, to make sure that we keep it at incredibly low cost. We leverage incentives, rebates, whatever locally is available to help lower the cost of the installation. Since we are the entire turnkey process, that allows us to make this a very seamless experience. So we have the sales single point of contact from the selling point all the way to the end when it's commissioned and then gets passed on to the property management. We even then train the property managers on our system so they're aware of it. But the way we look at it is we really focus on three aspects: simple, intelligent, reliable. If you can hit those, you're going to make everyone happy. You want it to be easy. You want the driver to have a good experience. You want the property manager not to have one extra thing to manage and deal with. So we have a very simple platform that they can see it all. And if they don't want to ever log in there, they can reach out to us and we can help make any adjustments necessary. From the intelligence side, you need to have the technology to do things like load management. If any of your properties have demand bills on top of the electric consumption, those can be very high, and sometimes more than half of the bill is just those demands. So we have the technology that allows us, one, to put more chargers in by load managing them, and then also, if you do have a demand issue, we can cap the system at certain time frames to allow and make sure that you don't have too much expense that then runs up those demand charges. And because, like I said earlier, we have long dwell periods, we have more than enough time to allocate the power throughout the evening when people are home to make sure everyone gets a charge. Not everyone needs to get a full charge right at 5 p.m. when they plug in if they're going to be there for 12 hours. And then the last part is just reliability. It just needs to work. If it's not working, it's not acceptable. The EV industry charging industry specifically, it's a pretty bad rap for the reliability of the hardware. So we're really focused on making sure with redundant communication, fail-safes, everything we can on our side to make sure that that driver always gets a charge. It used to be an amenity. It's now becoming a utility. It's something someone needs to get to work the next day. So we're really focused on making sure that that experience is consistent and reliable for the drivers.
Can you talk a little bit more or give a little bit more detail about the cost model? What does it cost for the owner? Who pays for your service? How it works?
So currently, depending on the utility and the property's location, there are incentives and rebates in place. So for an example, here in Los Angeles, you can get up to 40 chargers installed in your property at zero cost. That is $200,000 that DWP covers of the cost. That covers the entire installation, zero cost to the property owner. And we actually have the capability to install ahead of that rebate and then carry the float until the rebate comes in so that we can get those chargers deployed even quicker. And then on top of that, we have a very low-cost model where we just take a little bit of the consumption revenue. So meaning if it's not being used, you're not having to pay for it. We have a couple different models. Obviously, we want to have flexibility depending on the situation. But we are able to tie the fees that come to us to the consumption so that if we do install 40 chargers and you don't have the adoption in your garage, but we can get them installed for free now because of rebates, it allows you to get those in and then not have a huge recurring fee until, as the process builds up, you'll just get a little bit of that consumption revenue would go towards us to cover customer service, warranty, break fix, credit card transactions, all those aspects of the system. But it's all controlled by us to make it a single point of contact.
And do the owners participate in the revenue above the cost as well?
And we are very open with the pricing model, so the property owner decides the price. So they can look at their electric bill and set whatever electric rate they would like. So we leave that in the property owner's hands. So we always recommend, because it's more of an amenity, you want to keep it pretty much break even, make a little bit maybe on it, but you don't want to be price gouging your residents, because EV drivers are pretty smart and aware of what the pricing looks like out there. Just like how a gas driver knows what gas looks like. Pull up to a gas station, it's $12. You're going to say this is crazy and go somewhere else. So same thing with electric vehicles. If you price gouge, it does create resistance and lower utilization. So we always recommend to keep it just a little bit in there for yourself.
And most of your installations in older buildings, newer buildings? How are you managing that?
We prefer, honestly, to go into retrofits, and the reason being is that we can come in there and just get it done very quick. New construction we do as well, but if anyone here has done new construction, it's a very time-consuming process from the engineering, construction, permitting, finally getting it C of O'd. So that can be multiple years. So we like to come into properties, know what's available. We maximize what we can put based on the infrastructure in the property. We don't like to pull in new service unless we have to, because that could add up to 6 months to a year and hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. So what we always target is, what do you have available now? How can we maximize the utilization of that infrastructure and be very efficient with the technology to allow that to help manage the power so that you're able to have more ports and chargers in that garage without having to upgrade the infrastructure because of the management.
Sign me up.
I think it was number 3 on the apartments.com search too, right? Electric charging.
Correct. And as time has come, finally the inflection point with EV drivers starting to, more manufacturers making vehicles available to EV drivers. So now it's become, the top, just like you're saying, Jason, top 3 most searched item on rent.com is to check that box to say, does that building have EV charging available? So it is becoming definitely a necessity as things progress.
So David, there's so many different electrical locks and I guess mechanical locks out there. Talk about the pain point that you guys saw and how you're kind of solving it for both residents and building owners.
Yeah, so Openpath being an access control provider, we approach the technology a little differently than most of the access control providers out there, because we're using the power of cloud computing and we focus on a mobile experience. And then so that really ties into that resident experience, right? Resident experience today is mostly mobile because you can interact with the property, with the community in a different way, right? More intimately. And what we found was there's an expectation, and there's actually through COVID, the pandemic, it drove a need, right? That I can do things and the building will be responsive to me, right? So my ability to not just only unlock doors from or into the parking garage and then into the elevator and then up to my unit or an amenity space, but the ability for me to make reservations, right? So during the pandemic, if you were enforcing in your fitness centers capacity management, right, for social distancing, you could enable that reservation through the app, and that app would turn on your access privileges into that gym, right? It would turn on per your reservation and it would expire. We also discovered that, Jason, your daughter had this experience, the need or the expectation for self-touring, right? So if I'm a resident of the future and I'm going through a process, geez, it would be nice for me to be able to unlock the doors that I need to unlock all the way to that apartment unit, so I can see the one that's available and I'm keenly interested in. So that was a second area. What's behind the scenes is that power of the cloud computing is it gives you as an owner or operator the ability to scale your system, right? So you might start with in a vintage Class B property, it might just be that main entry point to get into the building, but over time you can just add more and more entries to it, right? And because it's cloud, it's just a matter of flipping a switch. The second thing we find with cloud is it just makes you more nimble. You can push updates out in real time, right? So that means that as you're adapting to new expectations or new requirements that the market's presenting, you have a means of doing that. It's not oh geez, this old system that we have running on a Microsoft computer in my office, how the heck am I going to get that to do what I need it to do? Through the cloud, that pushes out. As soon as it's available, it's on your system. So those are kind of the key ways and our approach to the market today, and that can extend from new construction or a retrofit. It's extend from those primary entry points at the perimeter And then more and more we're finding all the way to the apartment unit lock, because you want that and you expect that seamless experience, right? I never have to reach into my pocket to pull out another key or another fob. It's everything I can do is on my phone, or if I want to continue to use a fob, it's on the fob.
So are you guys selling the software and the hardware?
Yes, great question. So for Openpath, we're both a hardware and a software platform. Our hardware are the access control readers, those wired access points, and those readers and all the electrified door hardware, the electric strikes or the mag locks, they wire back to an Openpath panel, just like access control works today throughout the industry. Our hardware is a little smarter. We've done some innovative things like put cameras into the readers itself. So now you have the ability to see who's on the other side of that door. You might want that for real time before you unlock it. You might want it for after the fact in case you need to do some sort of investigation or analysis. We've also built voice AI into some of our readers. So now that reader will actually engage with you, right? And so it will help you, connect you, especially if you're a visitor or delivery person, connect you with your host automatically.
And so are you finding that most of these implementations are in existing buildings or newer buildings? How have you guys been scaling up your implementation?
Yeah, it's a fair question. So the short response is we're applicable in both, but what we find is there's so much more inventory that's in operation today that's the biggest part, the biggest opportunity of the market. And we find that as owners or operators are trying to pivot, trying to adapt, they're realizing that technology investments they made, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago just can't meet what the market needs today, what that new baseline is. So that's been where a lot of our traction has been. But new construction is also important. Yes, it does take a long time to get a building out of the ground and to deliver, but it's you're planting seeds for the future.
Yeah, if I may add just one point to what David just said. So whenever we deploy a technology for resident, we measure the adoption of it. I mean, that's the key. And we measured adoption of resident-facing application, one that had access to door control system, where you can open the door through your mobile device. And the other set of buildings had just a resident app, but no mobile access to the doors. The one with no access control enabled mobile app, the adoption it started with like 10% adoption, but dropped to like 0 after month 2. One with smart access control stayed at more than 90%. So if you give resident real value where they can really open a door through mobile device, let their guests in through mobile device, adoption stays extremely high. One where you just let them pay your rent or do other things, adoption stays low and it dropped to 0 in many, many buildings. So it's very important that these things are being asked and demanded by residents.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. When you especially look at the smart locks, I'm sure everyone knows this, you got to take a look at what the smart locks do, because you could wind up with some technology that really doesn't do what you want and work, and you'll end up replacing it. So definitely ask all the questions, like with charging, what do you do if a resident, or if the power dies? So those sort of things. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, and Anil, to your point on the app engagement, right, long-term adoption and utilization, without question, you're right. Unlocking doors is the single highest use utility, right, that an app can provide, because you're unlocking doors many times every day. I'm paying rent probably once a month. Mm-hmm. Maybe through your package I can do it weekly. But that's where we find people, they'll explore the app more because they're in it, right, every day, and you can continue to introduce new capabilities, new features that just enhance the value of that resident.
Yeah, for maintenance as well, that's really key, is having the smart locks on and being able to, have a maintenance guy get a time window. And a lot of the systems are working with the ERPs to where you can schedule that work order and have it unlock in that time window, and they'll come into the unit.
And you'll talk about kind of how you think about the investment, because all this technology requires investment, except for Zigo, where you're getting that for free, pretty much. But most of the technology, there's obviously a cost, both a capital outlay, but sometimes also an investment in time and energy to just implement it and get it through the system. With so many new technologies out there, how are you narrowing what you focus on, and what kind of returns metrics are you thinking about in order to make that investment?
Yeah. So investments is the key decision we look at all the time. First of all, we try to identify the gaps to figure out what really gives the value. And these days, lots of applications are being built, like you can buy them and integrate it. So we are looking at that as well. And in San Francisco, especially in San Francisco, you cannot pass the cost to resident. So it has to be borne by the landlords. So we look at not in terms of what it's costing us versus what we can pass to residents. We look at in terms of retention and higher leasing velocity. So we use those as metrics to measure. But at the same time, when we are looking at what values we need to provide, we are asking residents, we are doing surveys, we are learning from other owners and operators to really stay in sync with where the market is moving, and we are solving the problems that will really help the resident, right? So as I said, flexible payment, pay on the credit card and earn rewards. When residents move in, another example is moving is a very stressful experience. How do we streamline? So if somebody is moving from, let's say, New York to LA or San Francisco, how do we streamline their experience and how we can enable this experience through mobile? So we are listening to all the vendors and piloting the technology. One of the things we do really well, because we have more than 350 buildings, if we like a piece of technology or a solution, we can pilot on 5 buildings or 10 buildings and really see what the adoption is and really see what the value is. So the key proposition for us is pilot quickly on buildings we like to pilot and see the benefit, and is it really solving a problem or not. So we are really measuring the adoption KPIs. So that's kind of how we do things.
Yeah, for us, we do the same as well. But for us, too, it's capital, right? Having that capital expense up front for, hey, we're going to rip out all the locks 100%. So we really look at solutions and partners who, kind of do, as I was saying, look for the rebates, look for the options, and also look for a partner like on the locks and smart things that will say, hey, you don't have to do it in 800 units. We'll work with you, and we'll do it as you use your natural occupancy and retrofit as you move along, and not have to do it all up front, because that really cuts down on the capital costs of doing that. And same thing, we pilot 5 properties. We'll generally a couple different options before what we decide to do, and then look at, all right, this is a solution that helps out not only the resident, but also can help us out in our operations end as well when we look at technology and the demand.
So Jason, for somebody that's in the audience or in the audience thinking about a new development, is there like a short list of must technologies that are kind of top of mind that you would suggest that they implement or plan on implementing?
Charging for electric vehicles, definitely, but and having the smart units, right? You don't have to go for the full-blown smart units where you've got everything in there, command, but I mean, just think of the basics, right? What do people want? They want the thermostats, they want the door. You don't need everything. You don't need a fridge that talks to you and all that. I mean, you do, but I would with the basics on there, because it's nice to have when you build, but 5-10 years down the line, they're going to be looking at retrofitting and replacing what they put in. So you want to be cutting edge, but not bleeding edge, and overbuild for that. So I would recommend that. But new construction is so hard, though. I would agree with these guys. Even for us, they'll come in and ask me, and then they get out into the field and they'll just do whatever they want. And there's 10 or 15 different guys in there pulling different strings, and so retrofitting is easier. I'd agree.
Yeah. So for new construction, kind of the feedback that we hear from owners or developers, there's kind of attributes of technology that are important to them. They've learned through time and through maybe sometimes going down the wrong path. That kind of the 3 key things are: think mobile, right? So there has to be a way to tie into a great mobile experience for your residents. You probably want to be cloud-based, because that facilitates, again, that nimbleness, that the ability to pivot where an on-premise system doesn't allow you to do that quite as easily, as elegantly. And then the third would just be that they're open platforms, right? So API, and so an application programming interface, so that each system can talk to each other. And you may not have a use case for that today, but there's going to be one that emerges, and you want to be able to tap into that API in order to be able to deliver that. So that's, those are kind of the three. I'm curious if that's part of the thinking as you're looking, evaluating different vendors. Is that?
Cloud-based API access is different. Definitely something we look for, because you want it to integrate with all your systems, right? Because we're going to go out and we're going to choose the best of breed. Too many companies try to do everything, right? And it just doesn't work out because they just wind up not doing anything well. So if you find the best of breed with good APIs and they're cloud-based, and even from the construction standpoint, when I work with some of our builders, I'll mention, hey, think about the building infrastructure, and everything's wireless now, so you think you don't have to connect the buildings, but you actually do when it comes down to technology. So one way or another, even with you're going to go with the new cellular technology, they still want to link your buildings, and unfortunately, some of that is still hardwired. So always think of that.
Interesting. I had a good question, but forgot about it. Nothing. Anil, for you, what? Again, you talked about rent. You talked about door locks. Anything? What's next that you're looking at? How important is integration? Quite frankly, I think that's what I was going to ask. Is with your existing systems, and are residents getting app fatigue yet?
Yeah, no, integration is key. If you are looking at a vendor and if they cannot integrate, look somewhere else. For resident, you don't want them to go to 5 different apps to do 5 different things. So seamless, one app, if possible, experience is the key. To answer the second part of the question about what we are looking at next, if you think about a resident, for us, security of the residents is very important. So not only smart access to the locks, but also security feed into the camera. So they can see their units, they can see the lobby, they can see when their packets are being delivered. And being in San Francisco downtown area, getting a package delivered and having it safe in your lobby is extremely important. So we are looking at partners who can keep your packets until you pick them up. So that area is also growing fast. We are piloting with a vendor on how that works. So that's definitely
different than the Amazon lockers.
Yeah, we have Amazon lockers too, but sometimes Amazon lockers, they would put it in your lobby and that doesn't look too well. So plus, if somebody is getting a furniture delivered, then
that won't fit in
that
the locker.
won't fit there. So how do you
We
have
find
it?
the same with that.
Yeah,
They just don't get used.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you have it safely stored until the resident picks it up? And resident these days could be anywhere. They could be in Hawaii when their package is delivered. So how do you keep it safe for a week or 2? So these are the areas we are exploring.
Are the deliveries companies cooperating in terms of coming in and looking at the different systems?
Yes. Yeah. And this area is, again, evolving very fast. One thing we are noticing in PropTech is new ideas are coming from all over the place. And if you want to build your experience for residents and provide them services, you will have lots of options. So look at what's available, what works for your resident, your building, and pick the right platform. And everything that Jason and David said in terms of integration, open APIs, those are going to be the key. As I said, if they have to go to 5 different places to do 5 different things, adoption would be not there, and you will, invest in technology or system that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and just on the open APIs, like one of the big initiatives we have right now is, dashboards and reporting and getting that operational data going. And that's one of our big projects of the year. So having systems that work with that is key, because that helps us not only with, resident data, but operational data as well.
So on the back end, you now are able to capture all that data and do some data analytics to be able to determine what are the key drivers of the resident experience and make your investments accordingly.
Yeah, we started our journey with a different platform that we're going to be sunsetting, just because it's not flexible, right? It doesn't have all the open APIs, doesn't have the flexible reporting doing. We're rolling out a new system that's built on Microsoft's Power BI, and it's built for the real estate industry. And you can basically pull whatever data you want into it, right? Because it's got an open platform for you to do that and manage and massage that data. So that's key for us and a big initiative, and it's got the full company backing all the way up to our major partners.
Yeah.
Add to that, in the EV side of the business, at least for the charging, data is obviously incredibly important to us as well. That's what we have a dashboard for the property owners that is an open API that can be integrated into other dashboards as well. But the key is we monitor that consumption, that usage, that utilization to then justify when it makes sense to add more chargers or put that next step of investment. So you clearly are able to look back at the history and make a rational decision based upon that past experience and what is going on with that property. And some properties just naturally will have more utilization than others. And when you see it and you can justify the next step, you bring us back in and we lay out the options of what it looks like to continue to expand the system. So you're not forced into a huge upfront cost. If you want to do it in a modular fashion, you can do that by just continuing to add to the system as necessary.
Yeah, for us being in third-party property management too, that's key because we live on the fee, and that cost per door really eats into that. So knowing what that cost per door is with all the different things that we're running is so key into our profitability.
Zach, are you guys integrated into the billing systems, or do you have your own separate billing system, billing that goes out to the tenant? How does that work?
We have both options. Right now, the primary is our own billing system, just because of the way that it works from the charging side. It's easier for us to have full control over the systems, but we do also have the availability to integrate with other payment systems. So like you're saying before, you don't get overburdened with too many apps. We have the ability to integrate to an app if necessary so that our charging initiation functions can be triggered from some other app without even having to be a part of our ecosystem.
So we have about 5